Alright, welcome to the channel. Today we are working on a 2001 Kawasaki Ninja Zx9r. Bike came to me with a supposedly bad engine. Customer stated he was riding it. It just died on him. Someone told him that there was metal shavings in the oil and that he needed a motor. So the first thing I done was check and make sure we had oil in the engine, which we did. Put a hot battery in her. Made sure it had 12 volts at the battery. Went to turn the ignition on and we didn't have anything light up. We do now. We didn't then. He had a fuse for the ignition, 10 amp. As you see, it would appear to look good and not blown. However, with my old handy dandy digital test light, I was able to test and find out that we were only getting 12 volts on one side and it was not going through the fuse. Replaced the fuse. That allowed us to get a beautiful cluster. So, went to crank it, found out that we had no spark. Like almost every ZX9 that I've got not running, this one should be about the same. So immediately checked to make sure that we had a factory Kawasaki ignition switch, or at least an OEM Kawasaki ignition switch. You have a gray wire that comes out of the ignition switch. This is the pigtail. It'll run into the frame there. So this gray wire, as you see on this side right here, is the one that we want. This one's a little dirty, showing its age. So with the key in on position, this is how you're going to test the gray wire first. You want to make sure that that gray wire has less volts than the hot wire. As we see, this is not the gray wire, but this one showing 11.6. Now our battery should be about 11.6, 11.7. We got 11.8. So we know that we have proper voltage here. 0.2 volt of a drop. Now at this gray wire, you want a lot more of a drop than what you have there. And the reason why is the gray wire has a 100 ohm resistor in it, and that resistor drops the voltage so the bike will start. So that voltage drop will get sent to your igniter box or your CDI box to let it know that no one's trying to steal it. It's kind of like a theft security on it. So if that gray wire does not have a voltage drop and it matches your hot wire coming out of your ignition switch, that is your problem. You need to replace your ignition switch with the OEM Kawasaki ignition switch, not an aftermarket one. Or you can try to put a resistor in there to get that voltage drop that is required by the CDI box or igniter box to start it. So as there, we got the voltage drop. That's not our issue. So we can shut the ignition switch off and go to our next. So we want to go to the coil to try to eliminate your kill switch next in the process, because if your kill switch is bad, obviously you won't crank over. But I have seen them where some of them will crank but will not send a 12 volt power signal to the left side wire on your pigtail for your pickup coil or your coil. So it's a red and black wire. Again, bike's showing its age, but that will be the same wire across the board. You can see it better there. Be on the left side of every one of your coil coil pigtails through and through. So probably do this better. That's someone assisting, but basically you turn your ignition switch back on and you can put your test light into that pigtail. So 1 second. And as we see here, we have close to what the battery is showing. So we have 11.6. And if I let it go, you see it was that red and black wire there. So as long as you have that power source, then we can kind of eliminate your kill switch. So No spark, but we have a power source going to the coil. So the next thing we're going to check is the wire to the right side. Now on this one, you have got to get a ground pulse. It's the reason why we checked the ignition switch to make sure that our gray wire had the voltage drop in it, because that voltage drop gets sent to your igniter box, and the igniter box is what completes the circuit and sends a ground pulse to your coil. So you do have a pickup coil on the side of the motor, and that is what generates the ground pulse for your coils. It is right here. So after hearing about the metal shavings, I wanted to take this cover off and make sure that it didn't drop the bike or didn't knock around this pickup coil. Back to our handy dandy repair manual. Get my hand to steady straight. You can see here, this is the test data, and then our pickup coil resistance should be between 375 to 565 ohms. Well, this one was in spec. So I know that we're in spec here. We're good to go. This is doing what it should be doing. So the only thing left in that system is to ensure at the pigtail of our igniter box that we're getting the right voltage from the gray wire on the ignition switch. Because between here and the ignition switch, we could have a broke wire. So I found the gray wire, tested it, and we do have that voltage drop here too. So with all that being said in the system, I was able to swap the igniter box. This is the one that was on the bike. This is a couple extra that I have laying around because I love the Zx9s. Plugged it up, and voila, we had spark. So when diagnosing these bikes, make sure you go through the steps. The biggest thing is I bought at least 3 or 4 Zx9s that had different switches on there, and I was not getting the voltage drop on the gray wire. That fixed most of my issue, and sometimes that is the case. But you can run into a fuse, which is something simple and easy. Before you go spend the $170 plus off of eBay on one of these igniter boxes, just go through, rewatch the video, check voltage everywhere, make sure you're getting it where you're supposed to. And as long as all that is good, then you should get sparked. The igniter box is one thing that I have not found a way to test. Kawasaki dealer will not test them. They'll just replace them. So if everything else in your system, your ignition switch is a factory OEM, you're getting your voltage drop at your gray wire, your kill switch is working, you're getting power at every one of your coil pigtails, everything's looking good there, all your fuses are in check, and you're getting your voltage drop at your gray wire on your igniter box. And most of all, your pickup coil is ohming out what it should ohm out at, between 375 and 565. So 375 to 565 on the ohms on your pickup coil. And you can follow this pigtail up, which should be the same on almost every ZX9. If that's ohming out like it should, then you have a bad CDI box. Now on my ZX9 that I have over here, so you're all pretty sitting over here in the corner, I bought it with the no spark condition. Ended up being my fuse block. My fuse block had water that gotten into it because the bike was left outside, and it ended up shorting out the circuit board because I was not getting 12 volts on both sides of my fuses. Replaced the fuse block and had to go in, order me a factory Kawasaki ignition switch. This is an aftermarket cheap one, probably off of Amazon, I had to guess, or eBay. You see the key. That is a factory Kawasaki key right here. And this is the key off of this ignition switch here. And you can tell the difference in between. This one right here is a 02 Zx9r. Kind of see the difference. So ensure that you have the proper ignition switch and the proper voltage drop on your gray wire. And that's all there is to it. If you have any questions, remember to drop a comment. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions and all questions. And this book here has your wiring schematic for the E model, E and F models in the US. The UK models are different. As we see here, this is for the F2 UK and Europe models. This is the wiring schematic for everything that you'll need. And this is for the E1, E2, and F1 models, which should be your 2000 and 2002, or 2000, 2001, and then 2002 Zx9r.